So, here you are. I suspect that means that you want to be OP. Alright, so this is an OP guide here for Final Fantasy 13-2. Now, the first things that we're going to want to do, I'm going to assume that you've already played the game before. You need to go through the events of New Bodom, as well as Brescia Ruins, at least to a certain extent in Brescia Ruins. Basically, what you need to do is you need to get through to the point that you can get to the gate that leads to the Sunleth waterscape. Then complete most of the events there that you can, which will lead you to the Archilt Step. Then you'll have to beat the Feral there, and then go back to Sunleth and kill the Mutant Tomato. So one of the things, though, that you can do pretty early on is you can actually seal up the gate here for New Bodom. And you actually need to go to the Brescia Ruins in order to get that gate seal. And then replay the events here until you get to Gagabang. Now, the reason why I do this is for the power wristband, as you can see here. You can actually get the power wristband to drop from the Gorgonaspids as well. They are also in New Bodom, but it's more difficult to get it or to come across them. And then on top of that, it's the rare drop. So it's just easier, in my opinion, to save before the Gagamog fight Gagamog. If you get it to drop, you're good to go. Save your game. You can actually kind of redo all the events again and just keep farming that if you want to do that. And obviously, I like to stick those on Noel. I normally always build him strength, which I think is smart to do, and then either use him as a commando, or if I'm kind of going with something goofy like I'm going to do for this guide, I'll use him a lot as a Ravager, but he still has those strike abilities, so those will go off his strength stat. Now, the other cool thing here that you can do now, this is tougher and more annoying to do, is actually farm Atlas for Magician marks. Now, those will be used for Sarah. They're going to give you a 10% to your, an additional 10% to your magic. Now, at the beginning of the game here, when you don't have your levels aren't as high, the Atlas battle will take, to be honest, a lot longer than I'd like it to. So, I would say that this is best left for once you've actually leveled up a little bit. It also helps to try to do this like in like subsequent trips. I don't think it's a great idea actually to do this your first trip here. I just think that that's a I don't think it's worth like constantly resetting your game. So again, don't do this on your first trip through Brescia Ruins. And this is actually the initial fight. So right as you hit Brescia Ruins, this fight happens. And again, I mean, if you get super lucky your first try, great, good on you. You're lucky. But if not, again, I would say wait until a little bit later once you've leveled. For sure, once you've already unlocked the monsters, because it's really early on in Brescia Ruins that you unlock your basically your third character, which is going to be a monster. So. Again, I would say if you're going to try to farm these Magician marks right away early on in the game, wait just a little bit, at least until you get that third character. Now, the other thing now that we can do that, so I would say, so basically the best or the craziest way to do or to make your character super OP early on is if you've got the DLC. And the reason why I say that is because immediately after you unlock monsters, you can go to Valhalla, which we're going to do here, and actually get the commando version of Lightning. And I'll be honest, like that's the one thing I would say that you can do that has the most effect on whether or not you're OP for the entire game. And again, you can do it almost immediately. So again, basically play through New Bodom, play through the Brescia Ruins, at least until you get to the monster tutorial. Once you've unlocked the monster tutorial, you can leave immediately, return to the Historia Crux, go to the Valhalla, and go through this. And so a couple of things here. It's likely, if you're pretty decent at the game, that you will actually be able to win before you've unlocked like Lightning's 10th level. And now, if you try to beat this at level 10, when Lightning's stats are basically completely maxed out, you can't actually get Lightning's Crystal. You have to do it at level 9 or lower. So I would just recommend, again, if you weren't able to get, or if you weren't able to beat Caius before you got to level 10, I mean, I would really question how doable that was. But you know, if you did, if it took you all 10 levels, I mean, unfortunately, you're going to have to knock Lightning's level down at least to 9 in order to get Lightning's crystal. So keep that in mind. Although, again, I suspect if you're decent at all at the game, you'll be able to get it much earlier than that. I don't know what the best or the earliest I was able to do it. You know, maybe Lightning was level 5. I don't know. I just don't remember. But if you are able to even get to level 9, it's actually incredibly easy. It takes almost no time at all. The important things I would say with this is during Caius's commando stance, you know, every time he snaps his fingers, you need to get into Paladin immediately. It's going to just, I mean, if you don't, it's going to do a ton of damage to you and really set you back. So, again, make sure that you're hitting Paladin. His Ravager, you just kind of got to beat your way through it. I would say, too, I mean, haste or using the aura ability from the, I think it's the Conjurer, to give yourself haste is really important for the first half of the fight. For the second half, I actually don't like haste. Because most of Chaos Bahamut's abilities are going to kind of like knock you back or kind of, you know, reduce your ATB recharge rate. So I actually like to use Mighty Guard and just kind of, you know, hack your way through it. So other than that, I mean, honestly, I think that, excuse me, with those two tips and being at level 9, Chaos Bahamut is actually pretty easy. So I guess obviously just watch for his, he'll either do a resist lightning or resist wind, sorry. And, you know, just watch for which one he does, and then if he uses, you know, resist lightning, well then you can't use the mage. Whereas if he uses resist wind, you can't use the shaman. So again, I guess, you know, keep that in mind as well. Watch out for his Mega Flare now. To be honest, I think I just ate it once he transformed. So we'll see. But again, I think you can afford that, especially if you're trying to beat him at level 9. Now, if you're trying to go earlier, you really need to be careful because Mega Flare will most likely one-shot you if you're not in that Paladin, and if you haven't got there early enough to, or sorry, swapped to the Paladin early enough to get Immortal off. So here's Metamorphosis. He's going to use Mega Flare almost immediately. Now, I think usually he uses Mega Flare towards the end, but for whatever reason, I think he did it pretty early on me here. And here, you'll notice, so I used, I think that was Aura, which is what gives you the, you know, the haste and the bravery and faith. But I don't think that was a great idea. So if you notice there, every time he's catching me in the air, it's knocking me back, and you know, I end up just wasting a lot of time, unfortunately, because I didn't go with Mighty Guard instead. Yeah, see, it seemed like every time too, it just wasn't timing out well, and he was catching me in the air. Here's Mega Flare. And obviously, I'm not going to hit. So obviously, when he's about to use Mega Flare there, it's always best to kind of know when he's going to do it. And I know that sounds kind of crappy, but because it can be tough. But usually, you'll get the feel for whenever he's going to use it. You know, he might even have a pattern for all I know. Maybe it's, you know, 3 obliteration breaths, and then he does Mega Flare. It's probably something like that. But anyways, once he is going to do that, obviously you'll want to get into the Knight and use Immortal to block that damage. And then one last thing I want to mention here is that it's actually really important to use Legion of One during certain times, namely when he's staggered and when you're a Paladin. You don't really want to be using Legion of One when you're on one of the other classes, because you're just not going to do as much damage, and thus you won't be able to absorb as much HP back. So again, that's another little kind of trick to success, I guess, for that. So there you have it. We took down Chaos Bahamut and got the Lightning Crystal. And again, I would still say that the number one thing in order to help you out or make you OP, especially early on in the game, is actually to get that Lightning Crystal. She's just amazing, absolutely amazing. And yeah, there's not much more to say to that. I just don't think that there's a single other thing that you can do, especially early on, in order to make yourself just ridiculously powerful. So, unfortunately, though, that is the DLC. So, if you don't have the DLC, my secondary option is going to be the Blue Chocobo, and that is found in the Arc-Out Step, which, that's the other thing. Arc-Out Step is the best place in the game, in my opinion, to power yourself up early on. There's a wide range of monsters, wide range of monster materials, and I mean, you can get some of the best weapons in the entire game right then and there. So, anyways, all right, let's level up Lightning. I'm just going to use potent abilities, or potent crystals. Sorry, I should say potent materials. Actually, they actually might all be potent crystals now that I think about it, because I think you start out with tier 5 monster abilities, or monster materials, sorry. So, again, level up Lightning. Again, I'm going to go with potent materials just because they're the easiest ones to get a hold of. Now, you actually can see there I've got 99 mana materials too, or mana crystals, sorry. But I went with potents. I just think that the amount of health as well as power and magic is just kind of the way to go with those potents. So, anyways, kind of to finish off this early game OP Lightning build, I'm actually just going to grab a... Oh, what are these things called again? Calitodon or something like that? We'll see here. We're about to fight them, so... now, keep in mind, in order to make these guys appear here, you actually do have to beat the Mutant Tomato, which means you have to go to the Arc-Out Step, beat the Feral, and then come back here and beat the Mutant Tomato. And then basically right where you fight the Mutant Tomato, you can fight these guys. Reason why these guys are awesome to get right away is that I think they've got... It's either Item Collector or Item Scavenger. We'll see. And they get it right at level 1. So, just a super easy way to get them. And then here, the great thing is there's 2 of them in battle. So, if you notice here, like I did here, where I actually didn't get him to crystallize, you can actually restart and try again. I love this trick for actually obtaining monster crystals. Unfortunately, it only works when you've got multiple enemies. And these guys, though, I'll be honest, you need to kind of be built up a little bit to even take them down. They can be kind of nasty, so keep that in mind. And if you're having problems with them, I would say it's just a good idea to keep farming the Arc-Out Step. Get yourself a bunch of monster materials as well as a bunch of CP there, and build up Noel and Sarah. And there I got him to crystal. You could kind of see it there on the left side of the screen, so I knew that I didn't have to restart the battle again. But again, the other thing with these guys is Lightning helps out a ton because she's got Armor Breaker. These things are super resistant to chaining, and unfortunately they just don't take much damage at all until you've got them that chain gauge broken, unless you've got Armor Breaker, which again is one of the reasons why the early game Lightning Commando is so OP. And again, like, she'll do this kind of same thing against these enemies throughout the game, or different versions of these enemies. They're typically super armored, and that Armor Breaker just shreds them. So anyways, we will just about have this finished up here and collect our reward, which would be the monster crystal, and then I'll just infuse that probably on the Lightning right away. Reason for that is, yeah, there's our crystal. basically the earlier that you get Item Scavenger and Item Collector, the better off you're going to be. You're just going to be collecting, yeah, it's Item Scavenger 2, so sorry about that. So that's even better. It increases the odds of obtaining items after battle. So that's just going to help you out even more with your collecting items throughout the course of the game. I just think that you get that early on, and towards the end of the game when you actually probably are going to put a little bit more effort into kind of like perfect monster builds, or just kind of monster builds that you want to kind of play around with. You're just going to be set up better because you're going to have more monster materials that you will have gained throughout the course of the game. So, again, all right, we'll just slap that right on Lightning. So, I have to point this out right now. This build isn't to make Lightning the most powerful Lightning that you possibly can. I would never put Item Scavenger on a monster that I actually wanted to, or when I wanted to make them super effective. Again, this is just to build yourself up super early on in the game and kind of make the rest of the game a breeze. And then again, if the great thing about going with this route too is that once you do get towards the end of the game or later on when you really want to build up some powerful monsters, you will hopefully have gathered a lot of materials due to Item Scavenger and as well as Item Collector. Now, this is the Gankana Ace. I picked this because it's a really easy to level monster on the arc out step, and you get it there. So generally what you want to do with these guys, I actually run into them usually when it's like you set the weather to rainy, and then go to the marshlands. So that's the far western side of the map, and you can just grab these there. Again, the good thing about the Gankana Ace is it's always with a bunch of other monsters. So you can focus on it first to try to capture it and crystallize it. And again, if you don't actually, or if you're not able to crystallize it, you can always restart the battle and try again. So it's another one of those monsters that's just really easy to get a hold of. And obviously it's got Item Collector. So I'm just going to infuse that right onto Lightning, and basically now Lightning's done. She really doesn't need anything else for a gigantic portion of the game. This is, again, going to set you up for really collecting a lot of items early on, as well as, honestly, she's going to make a lot of the battles just almost irrelevant and just ridiculously easy. Because, again, she is just so powerful, especially early on in the game. And you can notice here, you see all of her abilities. She's amazing. And then on top of that, she's got Armor Breaker and Mind Piercer, which is just absurd. And then she actually does have that maximum damage, so she has no damage cap. And then what else did she have there? I think it's like enhanced. Yeah, she's got enhanced commando. And then she's got one more ability that I can't remember off the top of my head. But again, she's ridiculous. So if you don't have the DLC, however, you've got two other, I would say, really good options. I would say that Blue Chocobo is the best of those options because you can get it right here on Arc Out Step. The other option is the Narasimha or something like that. It's basically an albino-looking behemoth. Unfortunately, you need to go through a couple of other areas first. So you need to go through the first version of Yasha's Massif. You have to go through Erba, and then you have to go through, or you can enter the next version of Yasha's Massif, which is like 01X or something like that. Again, so, my goal here was to do things early on in the game, so I don't actually like that Narasimha option because you have to go a bit farther, to be honest. It's not that much farther. It's probably an hour or two, but, again, my goal here was to do things as early as possible, so, and then on top of that, I just don't think it performs as well as, it definitely doesn't perform as well as Lightning does. That is the Narasimha, which we're going to see here in a little bit. So again, I would say my second option is the Blue Chocobo. The thing with that then is that you actually get to move Noel back into the commando role for most of the time. And then, Sarah stays as Ravager, and then the Blue Chocobo is obviously a Ravager as well. Blue Chocobo's got some amazing abilities, and he's got really strong growth. So for this one, though, basically, normally, if I was going to actually build a Blue Chocobo, I would have gone with a really heavy magic build. But I just used a bunch of potent materials because, again, they're just easier to get a hold of. And my goal wasn't to make the most powerful blue chocobo, it was to make a really good farming chocobo. So, again, that's what I went with. So there's the Narasimha. Actually just kind of showed off some of his abilities there, but this is where you actually get him. And again, this is Yash's Masif 01X. And again, so you actually have to go a bit farther on in the story in order to actually even get here. So I don't think this is as good of an option. Now, it's a powerful monster. It maxes out at level 70. The stats are pretty impressive, to be honest. And then he's got some amazing abilities. So he's got Armor Breaker, Area Sweep, which is okay. What else did he have? I think he's got Bravery Feeder as well as Stagger Wound, I think it is. So again, he's actually really powerful too. Unfortunately though, he's in the area that I was fighting anyway. I could have swore that there was times where I saw two of them together, but the area that I was fighting, I was only ever running into one at a time. And so you can't use the trick where, you know, you kill one monster and if you get it to crystallize, you're good to go. And if not, you just restart the battle. So it took me quite a few shots of farming for him. And if you notice here, I'm already at 44 hours of playtime here. So I've spent a ton of time doing, you know, farming and whatnot. But I don't think that's not a real accurate representation of how much time it takes to actually get to this point. That would be, you know, ridiculous if. It's kind of hard to argue that, you know, this would be a super OP early game if you're already 44 hours in, right? So again, keep in mind that I've done just a ton of other random stuff to get to this point. So anyways, all right, so I'm leveling this guy up. We're actually going to see here. Jungle Law I don't like. That's kind of a crappy ability where, I mean, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, actually. So it's every time his HP is higher than his enemies, his stats are boosted, but if not, if he has a lower HP, his stats are lowered. So I'm not a big fan of that ability. And here I ran out of materials, it looks like, so I actually ended up taking a little cut here and finishing his build a little bit later. So here I think we're going to finish that up, or maybe it's, no, yeah, okay, so we're going to keep going here. So same with the other monsters. I just use potent materials. Again, they're just the easiest to get a hold of. And I mean, these weren't going to be my end game build, so I wasn't worried about, like, the perfect builds. Again, this was just to, you know, get something really beefy early on in the game, and then slap item scavenger as well as item collector on these. Again, just to, you know, farm and kind of efficiently obtain more items for later on in the game when I, you know, did want to make, you know, ridiculously OP monster abilities. So we'll just finish him up here, and I'll do those 2 infusions, and we'll just be done then. Yeah, so there's Bravery Feeder, and here, if you notice, I ran out of monster materials again. So unfortunately, I had to do a bit more farming on the Untitled Steppe. Again, like I had mentioned earlier, Untitled Steppe is just the place to farm for monster materials, as well as just kind of, I mean, honestly, powering yourself up. It's the best place in the game to do it. I don't know that it's, like, got the best CP gains by any means, but, you know, it's got potent crystals, potent essences, potent orbs, really almost all of the monster materials. There are some better spots for the really early or the lower level monster materials, but for those tier 3, 4, and 5s, I think this is just the spot to do it. So here is his final build, or his final abilities. Again, he's got some really good stuff here, but the other thing that I actually have to say that I didn't really like about him is it feels like he attacks really slow. So you know, unfortunately, I didn't really like this guy, the Narasimha. But who knows? He could be super effective. I mean, he doesn't even compare to lightning, unfortunately. But I mean, he's still good. So again, that would be, I would say, is the third option. And then here's my last Canna Ace that I just need to level up in order to get that item. I think it was collector on this guy. So that is basically it. So really, you only need to go through New Bodom, and then Brescia Ruins. And again, if you've got the DLC, I mean, get Lightning and just wreck the entire rest of the game. It just makes it stupid easy. If not, go to, you'll have to go from the Brescia Ruins then to the Sunlit Waterscape 300, and then that will unlock the Arc Out step for you. And then you can get yourself your blue Chocobo if you want. Again, that's my recommendation for your kind of like second option if you don't have the DLC. And, you know, slap item, collector item, scavenger 2, and you're basically set for the rest of the game. Now, if you really want to do some kind of crazy stuff, and again, I actually recommend this too, you might as well do it while you're here. Unfortunately, you have to be a little bit more leveled up in order to do these fights, but you can do the Ochu as well as the Immortal. Ochu has the Chain Bonus Boost 5 weapons, which are amazing for certain fights. Namely the, and I'm not going to remember the name of them because I never do, but there is a way to get mana crystals here on the Arc Out step. You have to change the weather to Stormy and then fight the, and again, I don't remember the name of the actual mob, but there's some goofy thing with, they basically put a barrier around themselves. And with those chain bonus boost weapons, you'll slaughter them. They're amazing for that. And then you can get yourself some mana crystals if you want them. They also have the blasters. I think it's like the blasters sapphire, I think it's called. And that is an interesting item. I don't know how good it really is or how effective it is, but apparently it boosts your Ravager roll. So if you want to get a hold of those, you can do that too. Bonus points, if you really want to go for some absurd farming, is to change the weather to sunny, and then there's basically a ditch that separates the west side from the east side. And there's an enemy there that spawns called the Metal Gigantar. And he's unfortunately a rare monster, and then on top of that, his rare drop are the Hermes Sentinels. Now, the Hermes Sentinels give you critical haste, so anytime you get knocked into the critical status, your haste activates. So there's the two weapons from Ochu. Again, those are, I got really lucky there. Most times that's not going to happen. If you don't get an item the first time, you can obviously just reload your game. Granted, you would have to have saved before you fought the Ochu. But you can reload your game, and then if you get one, okay, well then save your game. Basically, then you can change the weather and leave, go back to the, actually I would say first, go back to the Historia Crux, then change the weather, and then change the weather back to rainy to make the Ochu spawn again, and you can try again for the other weapon. That trick works with the Immortal as well, which we're about to take down right now. The Immortal has, I'll be honest, they're my favorite weapons in the game because they've got that ATB plus 50%. Now, again, I would say, though, for certain fights, those Ochu weapons are better. But for the most part, I prefer these weapons. So we'll just kind of leave it at that. So again, same deal with the Ochu. If you don't get the drop that you want, obviously what you want to do is save beforehand. Maybe that was obvious, but save beforehand and then fight him. And then if you get one of the weapons, good deal, you can save. Return to the Historia Crux, go back to the camp, change the weather once, and then change it right back to, I believe this is cloudy, and then that will make the Immortal respawn. So same deal then, you can just save in front of him, and then if you get the weapon, or take him down if you get the weapon you want, good, you're done. If not, just reload your game, reload your game. The cool thing about these two is you actually get a gigantic hunk of CP. I think it's like 10,000 CP for the first time you beat them. Unfortunately, you only get that once, as well as a fragment for each of them. But the other thing is, I mean, these guys take a bit to take down. So, and then the thing with the Immortal is he always summons a blade right away. So If you're not powerful enough, you'll actually want to take down that blade first, just kill that off, and then work on him. Otherwise, that blade will tear you up. So here's one of the weapons. That's the Indrajit, or Indrahit, something like that. That is Sarah's version of the ATB plus 50%. And then here is Knowles, which is the Romulus and Remus. Again, those are my favorite weapons in the game, and you know, if you can get those at this point early on, I mean, you're set. You're gonna wreck the rest of the entire game. So here you can see this is my basically this is the end of the game. This is my stats with you know, you can see here I've got Indrajit, haste sandals on both characters, which I think that's one step that I wouldn't recommend. I just don't think it's worth it. The amount of time that you'll spend just trying to get the Metallojantar, or whatever that thing is called, to spawn is going to be absurd. And then on top of that, it's a rare drop, so it's just a nightmare trying to get a hold of those. And again, for most battles, Hermes Sentinels are just not going to do you any good. Most of this stuff, you're just going to wax with these builds and with these characters. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed this guide, and I hope you enjoy being OP, because you're going to be. Thanks for watching.